Hey everybody, Smart Silver Stacker here. Hope you're doing well. From looking at the table here, you'll never guess what we're going to be talking about in today's video. Yes, silver bars. That's what we will be discussing today. Stacking silver bars. Some of the upsides, some of the downsides, because like anything in life, there's pros and cons to stacking silver bars. But I also am hoping I'll be able to go over some information today regarding silver bars and stacking them that maybe you haven't thought of before, you haven't encountered before. And if you're a new stacker, I definitely think you'll want to stick around for this video because there's a lot to be said for stacking silver bars. And I think that, if you're stacking physical precious metals, these are going to be on your radar, and you definitely should consider them as a form of hard money to add to your stack. But like I said, there's some pros and cons, some downsides and some pitfalls that you might want to avoid as well. We're going to be covering all of that in today's video, so stick around. Did you know that SD Bullion is giving away a monster box of 2023 Silver Eagle coins? Sign up today at sdbullion.com/sweepstakes. So one of the things that we have witnessed in the physical silver market over the past couple of years is rising premiums. Premium is the amount over the spot price of silver that you pay when you buy actual physical metal. So just to give you a quick example, if you're not familiar with this concept, if the price of silver is $24 and you are paying $27 an ounce, let's say, for your silver, that's a $3 premium over spot. Now, there's a lot of reasons that premium exists. The first and foremost is that spot price that everybody likes to look at, you got to keep in mind, that is not the price of physical metal. That is the price of a paper futures contract, a derivative of physical metal. But one of the reasons that these physical retail silver products have these high premiums associated with them is that there is a fixed cost to making silver bullion for each individual unit. A lot of the mints that make these, they'll pay, say, the same amount to make a 1 ounce bar as they do to make a 100 ounce bar. And so obviously, if that's the case, it's a lot more expensive to make 100 of these little 1 ounce bars than it is to make one 100 ounce bar. And then the same goes, you can scale that all the way up to, say, a 1,000 ounce COMEX bar. That's what they're trading on those futures exchanges. That's what determines the spot price. So that's why smaller bullion products, these retail products that are available to us stackers, cost a bit more than the spot price. And it's also the reason that when you go to something like a 1 ounce bar, you're going to be paying a higher premium than, say, a 100 ounce bar or even a kilo bar like this one, because it's just a lot more cost that goes into making those things. And so this is where silver bars really shine. I mean, yes, silver bars do come in all shapes and sizes, everything ranging from that little 1 ounce Silvertown bar all the way up to this 100 ounce Engelhard. But really, for most stackers, I think the focus should be on 10 ounce bars like this one and larger, because that is really where the savings begins to kick in terms of premiums. The larger the silver bar you get, the closer to the spot price typically. This is, a general rule. Obviously, there are some exceptions. We'll be talking about some of those in just a moment. But as a general rule, one of the best things that silver bars have going for them, especially nice generic ones like this Valcambi Suisse. Now, when I say generic, I mean, yeah, it is made by a specific mint whose name is on there, but there's nothing really special about this Valcambi bar versus, this 1 kilo bar, this Proclaim Liberty bar that I picked up from SD Bullion recently. Essentially, they're just valued for their weight. They're not collectible. They're not created by a government mint or anything like that. And so that's why we call them generic bars. And these bars right now are where you will find some of the best deals in terms of premium. Now, that is a double-edged sword, though. When you go with the larger size bars, there are some downsides as well. Now, one of those is that you have somewhat reduced liquidity with the larger products when compared to, say, 1 ounce round. And what I mean by that is that when the time comes to sell, it's going to be easier for you to sell a 1 ounce round or a 1 ounce bar, a smaller piece of physical bullion, than it will be to sell something like this, a 1 kilogram bar. And the reason for that is simply that, a 1 ounce round, the price for that right now, let's call it $25. the price for a kilo is north of $800. So you need to be able to find buyers who are looking to spend more money. There's a lot more potential buyers of silver out there that have $25 to spend than there are who have, $700, $800, $900. It's just a smaller pool of buyers, and it may be a little bit more difficult to sell. And so that's something you have to keep in mind. But even larger bars, they are still highly liquid. You could take this to any coin shop, any jewelry shop in the country, and very likely they are going to be able to purchase that from you. It's just, maybe if you want to look for an end user or another retail investor to sell to, might be a little trickier to sell something like a kilo bar. So it's not a big drawback, but it is something you need to keep in mind. Now, let's talk about why many of us are stacking silver. It is as an inflation hedge, and it's also as sort of a credit default swap almost against a currency crisis. It's like insurance against your currency failing. And while that might be a fairly low probability event, as time moves on here, as we're going through 2023 and beyond, it's looking more and more possible. So, that is a big motivation for us to stack. And in the same vein, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. If it fails, what will people fall back on for trade, for barter? Well, there's no guarantee that it's going to be silver, but I can tell you that historically, if you look back through previous currency crises, previous hyperinflations, gold and silver are the currency that many people fall back on. Now, more recently, say in Zimbabwe and in Venezuela, they had hyperinflations. What did people fall back on? Well, they fell back on the US dollar. But again, the dollar is the world's reserve currency. So if it fails, if it gets hyperinflated away, then what do people turn to? And I suspect, my theory, what I'm predicting, what my forecast here is that folks will fall back to gold and silver. And silver specifically for day-to-day transactions. For most of history, silver has been the money of your common man, your common woman, your everyday individual who is going out and buying some food to feed their family for the day, who is paying the rent on their home, who is maybe buying some fuel to power a vehicle or stay warm through the winter. That's the sort of thing that would get paid for with silver. And gold is a very dense store of value, so it's not really well suited to day-to-day transactions. And copper, it's good for making change. That's the other metal that we've used as money throughout history, but it's kind of heavy to be your primary currency. And so silver really has been the currency that time and time again throughout economic crises, currency failures, many failed experiments in fiat currency. Throughout history, whenever that's happened, silver has reverted to the currency. And a lot of people, when I talk about this, like a post-SHTF, prepper reason for stacking silver, they say, silver will never be money again. The dollar's not going anywhere. It's the world's biggest currency. And that's true. The dollar is the world reserve currency, but maybe it's fantastic thinking to think that someday we might revert to using silver for a means of exchange. But then again, maybe it's the real fantasy that, the dollar is going to persist forever when we've got $31.8 trillion in national debt and we've got $188 trillion in unfunded liabilities. And, former Federal Reserve Chairman Alan Greenspan, he himself in congressional testimony told us that, these payments would be going out, but their purchasing power would likely be greatly diminished. And I believe that that is what is on the way. And so, silver is definitely something that you can keep as insurance against a currency crisis. But, are you going to be making a purchase with a 100-ounce bar? This is kind of one of the criticisms of stacking silver bars that I hear. And it is, to some extent, valid. This is something we should listen to. And that's why I do think that before you start stacking silver bars, it's wise to have, at least some more divisible silver on hand. And that could actually be in the form of bars, right? You could just have some 1-ounce silver bars. You could have some 1-ounce silver rounds. Maybe you get some junk silver, some silver dimes, some silver half dollars, although the premiums on that stuff has risen drastically over the past couple of years. And I'm glad I stacked some when I did, but I'm not so sure that I would steer new stackers in that direction because the premiums are so high. Now, I think it's a good idea, like I said, to have some divisible silver on hand, but once you have that position, and how big that should be is going to vary from stacker to stacker. Maybe you want 10 ounces of 1 ounce rounds, maybe you want 100 ounces, maybe you want $100 face value of junk silver, whatever that might be. Once you hit that number, I think that the focus for your stacking, again, this isn't financial advice, I'm just telling you what I'm thinking, but I think it's wise to focus on the low premium silver at that point and to get more silver for your money. And bars are really perfect for that. Right now, 100-ounce bars, you can typically get a pretty good deal on those. SD Bullion, I think they just had a sale on RCM, that's Royal Canadian Mint 100-ounce bars, where you get them for $1.99 an ounce over spot. But today, you can still find a pretty good deal on kilo bars and on 10-ounce bars as well. You don't have to go as high as the 100-ounce bars to get that deal. And so these, I think, are some of the most appealing forms of silver to date. Now, as far as trading with these after a post-SHTF type scenario, well, I don't know. I mean, a 100-ounce bar might be a bit much, but a 10-ounce bar, this is kind of like a $100 bill. That's how I view this. It's not the sort of thing you're going to go necessarily buy a can of beans with, but, if you're doing a week's worth or a month's worth of grocery shopping and the dollar has completely evaporated in purchasing power, this 10-ounce bar has likely got enough purchasing power in it to get the job done. And, then maybe you get some change made in smaller forms of silver. But even if you can't, a 10-ounce bar I do think is the right size for those kind of, slightly more expensive day-to-day transactions. Now, the 100-ounce bars and the kilo bars, they are a little bit bigger, but honestly, I mean, you could slice this thing up with a hacksaw if you really needed to. And if things have gotten that bad, I don't think that would be a problem. In fact, the Vikings, that's something they used to do. It's called hack silver. And, they were raiding all the monasteries and stuff in Europe. They were taking all their religious icons, their crucifixes, their flatware, their candelabras, what have you, that were made of silver. And when they wanted to trade with them, they would just cut them up into pieces and use that as a currency. So that wouldn't even be without historical precedent. Now, again, all of this is probably, kind of low probability stuff. But as, we see the $31.8 trillion debt growing, and they just approved a suspension of the debt ceiling here in the U.S. until January of 2025, and then they're probably just going to raise it again. The amount of spending, the amount of money creation is getting out of control. This sort of thing is becoming more and more likely. And so, if you are stacking silver, you want to make sure you get the most for your money. Silver bars are a great way to do that. Another thing you might want to keep an eye out for when you're stacking silver bars is some of the higher premium forms of silver. I know that I've been talking about how these are low premium, but some bars, like Engelhard's are a good example, do carry a little bit of a higher premium, and that's because they are collectible. Now, in the case of Engelhard was a big bullion producer back in the 1980s, but they haven't made any silver. They shut their doors close to 40 years ago. And so it might even be a little more than 40 years. I'm not 100% sure of the date, but I know they haven't been making silver bars for some time. Now, I picked this one up. I guess I just got a good deal. I picked this up maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and I paid a very low premium over spot. But if you look at what these are going for today, compared to other 100-ounce bars, they have a decent premium attached to them. And it's not just Engelhard. There's also a Johnson Matthey. That's a big one. And there's several of these older bullion producers, older mints that were making these things decades ago that haven't made them in a long time. And now there is a collectible market for silver bars. And so, moving forward, if you're on a very long time horizon for silver and you're stacking, which, I mean, I am, I've never sold an ounce of silver. I've just been stacking it up for years, and I intend to continue doing so because I do think that the writing is kind of on the wall as far as inflation and currency collapse and all that goes. If you're on a long time horizon, then, even things like these Scottsdale mint bars, these can be occasionally found on sale still today because they're still making these for a relatively low premium. Now, if you just go out and buy them, yeah, you might pay $3 or $4 over spot for these, but you can find them on sale every now and then. SD Bullion has had sales on these fairly recently. And these are something that, let's say the Scottsdale Mint eventually goes out of business. I certainly don't want them to. If you're watching Scottsdale Mint, shout out. Your bars are some of my favorite products. But, if you stack those up and you hang on to them for a couple decades, it's very possible that these could end up becoming collectible, kind of like the Englehards. And also, it's a good thing to familiarize yourself with, because if you're out at your local coin shop or your bullion dealer or even an online dealer, you're shopping around the sales, discounted areas, if you know that, say, Engelhard or a specific type of old vintage bar carries a high premium in the collectible market, and you can get it at a lower premium, well, that's where stacking silver can really start to pay off if you educate yourself as to what those valuable collectible bars are. And a good way to do this is to go on eBay and just search for a vintage silver bar, or even just silver bars in general, and sort by completed auctions, and you'll see the ones that carry a high premium. I'll put some up on the screen here so you can get an idea of what I am talking about. So definitely, as far as silver bars go, familiarize yourself with the vintage and collectible bars. Now, another thing you might want to be aware of is the different types of silver bars there are. So these 2-ounce bars from Monarch Precious Metals, I have these out as an example because these are what's called poured silver bars. So I'm certainly not an expert on metallurgy or anything like that, but basically they take the molten silver and they pour it into a mold to make these. And you get kind of this unique ripple effect on the top here. You can see each bar is a little bit unique. There are some imperfections and stuff on the back. And this is a slightly more time-consuming, labor-intensive process. So typically poured bars like that are going to have a slightly higher premium versus bars like this from the Scottsdale Mint. These are what is referred to as cast bars. So these are made using a cast mold, and they're not pouring it in. I'm not sure, again, exactly how this works, but I guess they put some, silver shot or something like that into the mold, and then they melt it down and they make these cast bars. And these are cheaper to produce, typically have a lower premium associated with them. But, there's nothing wrong with that. These are also cast bars, by the way, these kilo bars. And you can kind of see they have a very particular look to them when they are cast. You can kind of differentiate those from the poured bars just by looking at them. Those typically are going to have a slightly lower premium. And the same thing goes with the vintage bars. Vintage poured bars, that's where the real collectability sort of comes into the equation. If you can find some good vintage poured bars, those are going to be worth a lot more than their silver weight. Now, I kind of want to wrap things up today with this video, just comment on some of the psychological effect that holding a silver bar has, because I'm telling you, when you put something like a kilogram silver bar in your hand, nothing else really compares to this. I mean, this is immediately recognizable to your brain, at least to mine, as valuable treasure, and if you show a lot of people out there, say, a silver round, and honestly, silver rounds like this one, they're really just a bar by another name. They're just a generic piece of silver that happens to be cast in a round shape. Same thing for this one. But these are, clearly treasures, certainly. But when you start holding something with the heft of a 10-ounce bar, these are very notable as valuable, as treasure. They have a unique feel to them. It's the sort of thing you'd find in a pirate's treasure chest. And I'm saying that, I'm not trying to be silly. It's like the human brain, and I don't know if it's biological or cultural or what, but these are immediately recognizable as treasure. And that's why I think that they are a great thing to add to your stack, because listen, when the time comes to sell these things, if that time comes, who knows, maybe you just stack them up and you pass them on to your kids as generational wealth. But if you do want to sell them at some point, there is absolutely a psychological impact of putting silver in someone's hand, a heavy piece of silver like this. It's definitely recognizable as something valuable, something to be treasured, something that represents wealth. Now, one last thing too is that with big silver bars, you do have to watch out for counterfeits. Making a counterfeit silver bar like this is quite a bit easier than making, say, a fake 1-ounce round. I'm not saying fake 1-ounce rounds aren't out there, but when you get up, especially to say the 100-ounce size, you could just hollow this thing out, fill it up with a metal like, say, I think molybdenum is the one they use because it's close to silver in density and characteristics, and you could have a silver shell. So make sure that if you are buying silver bars, you are either buying them directly from the mint. In the case of modern silver bars like this, if you're buying something like this and it's a new silver bar, say you're buying it from SD Bullion, that should be coming directly from the mint. And if you're buying it from a listing that says, secondary market, just, exercise some caution. If you're buying from a quality dealer, they should be assaying those things, making sure that they are legitimate, they're not counterfeits, but just something to be aware of, especially if you're buying from, say, another retail investor on the secondary market. Exercise caution when it comes to large silver bars. That is what I will close this video with. If you have any thoughts on stacking silver bars, leave them in the comments down below. This wasn't meant to be, an exhaustive, comprehensive coverage of everything having to do with silver bars. Just some thoughts and some of the things I like about them, and also, some of the things to avoid. So if there's something I missed, something you think should be added, put it in the comments down below. Let me know. Thank you very much, everybody, for watching. I always appreciate it when you leave me a comment, give me a thumbs up, or you subscribe to the channel. You're a great audience. And stay safe, everybody. Happy stacking. I'll catch you next time. Smart Silver Stacker, out.